Hello people of YouTube, my name is Brad. This is my channel, Anime Orange, and welcome to part 1 of the Sith TIE Fighter build from Metal Earth. We've got it right here, all finished and put together. We're going to be working on this today. It's going to be a 3-part video. Here's the packaging right here. I will say on the back, they have removed the difficulty scale. They're no longer giving that scale on the back of the models, and I'd be very curious as to where this one lays. Like I said, this is going to be a 3-part model, so this is pretty involved for a TIE fighter. But let's get to it. Let's go over to the table, open up the packaging, see what's inside, and start putting this thing together. Alright, we have the Sith TIE Fighter here. It's a new movie. Of course, we have a new TIE Fighter. It seems to be even more common than a new droid. Though we got a new droid too. Didn't get a whole lot of screen time, but it was there. What's inside? We have one sheet, which seems to have a complete coating of that kind of matte finish. And then, of course, some black and red coloring. We have instructions. Oh, we have a, looks like a half sheet buried inside of here. I'm just going to drop that and pick it back up. And this just looks like this just totally has that kind of matte gray finish to it. Oh, there's another half, a quarter part. Interesting. Again, looks like it's just kind of that semi-gloss mattish finish. And then we have another full-size sheet, metal sheet, with more parts. So we've got 2 full-size sheets, a half sheet and a quarter sheet for this particular model. Push those slightly out of the way. And we're going to grab these 2 pieces of paper and open up the first set of instructions. If by any chance this is your first Metal Earth model, we'll go over the instructions ever so briefly because they all follow a very similar, if not same, format. Open it up to the first page where all the logos are. We got Star Wars, we got Metal Earth, we got the line drawing, you got a 360 view. You can scan this QR code or just type in this web address to go see a finished 360 view of the model for reference sake. That can come in handy. I think this one has the 360 view up now. Below that we have the metal sheets. They're all outlined so you can and numbered so you can find the parts. I'm going to grab one of them. Looks like I've got sheet A. Also notice not only are the parts numbered, but the sheets are lettered, which is somewhat new. Glad that they're doing that. It makes it quicker and easier to find parts. Anyway, you can see this is an outline. This is an outline of this sheet with all the parts labeled. You'll notice that most of the parts in here are just outlines with no color, but there are some that are shaded in a solid color. The ones that are shaded in, that means they have duplicate parts. So for instance, this green part, you notice right here on sheet B is a similar green part, or the same green part actually. This one, let's see which one is numbered. This one is numbered 46. Both of these are part 46. There's a lot of symmetrical things that have the same parts on more than one place. So to cut down or make it easier to find those duplicate parts, they've started coloring them in, and I really appreciate that. It makes it a lot easier. We have like a gray part here. I think this is 47. There's a gray one there. There's some purple. I mean, there's lots of different. Actually, there's another slightly different shade of gray. I have trouble sometimes telling the different shades, but anyway, we'll work it all out. Moving on from that, we slide over to the top of the next page. We have kind of legend, some more information. We've got a sample part which has a notation of insertion tabs, insertion holes, and fold lines. The insertion tabs and insertion holes are pretty straightforward. Maybe not on the same part, but sometimes yes, sometimes no, but eventually an insertion tab is going to go in an insertion hole and be folded over or twisted to secure parts together. Fold lines are pre-scored areas where you're folding and shaping a part. Because these things, you come in flat sheets, you're going to have to fold it to make a thing. And those fold lines make it easier. Beside it is the legend E. You see that pointing at something, like here it's pointing at the engraved side or colored side of that part, so you know which way to orient it. NE is pointing at the non-engraved or non-colored side. So this right here is showing you that that top part appears that it doesn't have any coloring or engraving. Attention point, when you see that hand pointing at something, it's usually telling you something important. And my experience is this almost always has to do with alignment. Whereas, say, you've got two parts come together and one part has a thingy that sticks off, the tension point is telling you to make sure that thingy sticks off in this particular direction and not this direction, because the parts may be able to assemble in more than one way, but if you're doing the wrong way, later on you're going to have problems. So watch out for that. Below that, the old-fashioned blue circle and green triangle. Blue circle means to insert a tab in its slot and fold it over 90 degrees. I didn't really do a 90 degrees, but I tried. Green triangle means to insert a tab in its slot and twist it 90 degrees to secure it. We've got assembly tips about lightly twisting tabs that need to be folded until the bottle is more secure, and then you can fold them over. I usually suggest that when I get to that point. And then we've got some tools over here. I'm going to talk about tools here in a moment. Right now we're going to go down to the assembly flow chart. Starting with part 1, we see the part looks like it's a duplicate part because it's colored in. As I said, the engraved showing that the colored side or engraved side is facing up, and the red areas that are colored in are showing that those parts are being bent or moved. And you can kind of see by this arrow that it's being bent into sort of a V shape with the middle being flat. And you move over here, we've got another part which is labeled as 2 on sheet A. Here's the part, it's also folded and then added together. Move over here, we've got part 3 on sheet C. There's the part, it's also folded in kind of a V shape and added on top of, or on bottom, because this is kind of upside down possibly. It's added to this part, and here, no, it's added on top, sorry. It's added on top, and then here's the final result. You can see kind of all 3 pieces together. That's the gist of the instructions. You're just following along, folding the parts in red, doing the sub-assemblies and adding them on, and that's what you're doing, following these instructions till you get to the bottom. Page 2, jump over to page 3, continue on, page 4, over here, continue on. Once you get done with 4, you grab the next sheet, open it up, find page 5, 6, 7, and 8, follow on through. Of course, once you get to the bottom of page 8, you're done with your model. Let's talk a little bit about tools. The very basics of what you're going to need is a pair of tweezers and some clippers. The tweezers, you can do a lot of bending, shaping, twisting of tabs, folding of things over. The clippers are going to help you get the pieces out of the sheets cleanly and easily by clipping them out instead of trying to bend them out, which can cause damage. I've also supplemented my set with some precision tweezers. I have a couple of pointed ones here. One, I ground the tip down just a little bit to give it a more sturdy tip for tabs and twisting things, and then I have a precision flat set, and between all of these I can do a lot of bending and shaping and twisting. I also strongly recommend some sort of pliers to complement your set. I have some flat nose here that have definite uses. I have some long needle nose pliers for some of the longer pieces, and then I have some curved tips for grabbing things at an angle and bending them over. For shaping a lot of curves and dome shapes and whatnot, you'll see me use an array of 3D printed tools that I've designed that you can find on my Etsy if you're interested. Otherwise, you'll also see me pull out a cheap drill bit set that I have that's not sharp for shaping cylinder shapes, or just look around your house and use objects that you find like dowel rods, pencils, maybe some beads to shape certain things. I have a sculpting set here that I occasionally use, and they have all kinds of different shaped ends on them. Some flat, some angled, some spoon. There's a couple of hooks. They're useful for reaching in and bending and pushing and pulling tabs and shaping parts from the inside. We've talked about some tools. I've got some basics at the ready. Some tweezers, some clippers, some pliers. I've got my metal sheets over here kind of laid out on top of the instructions. I'm going to have to slide those over. But anyway, all my instructions and everything is at the ready. Let's start putting the Sith TIE fighter together. Be sure to clip out 2 of parts 1 through 5. This is assembly A. I should have put more of a hook in the end of the tabs since the parts join at an angle. I learned my lesson and started putting a hook in the end of the tabs on parts that connect on top of angled parts. Repeat all of these steps to make 2 of these assemblies. I'm going to skip doing it a second time here and move ahead. Oops, one twisted tab does not hold things on well. Luckily, the one twisted tab just screws back into place. Attaching this part with all the tabs was intimidating, but taking it one tab at a time, I got through it, even though the one part fell off again. I'm measuring up the gap to know what bit to use to shape part 9. I tried to use a drill bit to shape the center of part 10, but it really wasn't working. This is considered assembly B. Now it's time to make 2 more assemblies, much like the first 2 that we made. Learning a lesson from this first assembly, I bend the tabs down a bit on these 2 side pieces to make the tabs easier to bend and the side part to angle and line up much better. Be sure to do this assembly twice as well. This is assembly C. Part 21 has a little part that rounds and flips over. It's a bit tough to get to. I did my best, but the results were disappointing. Here we are bringing back one of the two assemblies labeled C. This is labeled as Assembly D. Next, we are going to bring Assemblies B and D together. had trouble lining up the tabs and slots. It seems that the angles were off and this part was too squished. I made some adjustments to get it to work. This assembly is labeled as right. Now we start working on the left one. Taking a lesson learned from the previous assemblies, I am squeezing assembly C into a slimmer, more angled shape. Previously, both A and C were too wide to fit where they needed to go. Also, when adding these side parts, I am bending the tabs down a little to allow both the parts to fit at a better angle, and the tab to rest at an angle that I can more easily grab and twist. The side part fell off again. Oops. I realized with this assembly that I had not folded this side of flap correctly. I thought it just tilted, but there is an angle to it. All 4 similar assemblies have a similar flap in the rear. I folded that wrong, it doesn't fit. This piece has a little round bit on the side like a previous section. I used a combination of tweezers and a drill bit to try and shape this one. I think it went a little better than last time. I had to sort of go back and forth from side to side when bending the center of part 10 into a curve. Since the center part had a gap in it, it did not bend all at once. I also found it helpful to check and make sure the sides and tabs were still in line. Now we have two of the arms that go on the side of the cockpit. And that brings us to the end of part one of this three-part build. We've built basically the arm sections of the TIE Fighter. We still have the body to put together and the side solar panels, I think they're technically called. I'm not really sure about that. But in part two, we'll finish doing this center body section. Part three, we will work on these outer parts in the stand. I'll see you in part two. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep on keeping on.